Commander Jake Sullivan stood on the bridge of the USS Thunderbolt, watching the blue and green planet grow larger on the main screen. Kepler Prime looked peaceful from space with its swirling white clouds and vast oceans that reminded him of Earth. This was supposed to be the day that changed everything for humanity. After decades of careful diplomacy and patient negotiation, the Galactic Coalition had finally agreed to consider humans for full membership in their powerful alliance. Ambassador Lisa Carter walked onto the bridge carrying a sealed case that contained humanity's most generous offer yet. Inside were the legal documents that would give the Coalition exclusive mining rights to 3 of Earth's most valuable colony worlds. The rare metals and energy crystals found on those planets were worth more than the entire human economy, but Carter believed it was a fair price for joining the galaxy's most influential organization. The Coalition controlled 12 different alien species and dominated most of the known galaxy. Their trade routes connected hundreds of worlds, and their technology was centuries ahead of anything humans had developed. Without their protection and partnership, humanity would remain trapped in their small corner of space while other species grew stronger and more dangerous with each passing year. Jake had served as Carter's military escort for over 2 years as she traveled between Coalition worlds building relationships with alien diplomats. He had learned to read the subtle body language of the serpentine Vorthak and understand the clicking speech patterns of the insectoid Krix. The negotiations had been long and difficult, but Carter's patience and skill had slowly won over even the most skeptical alien representatives. The ship's communication officer, Lieutenant Ben Taylor, announced that they were receiving landing coordinates from the planet's surface. The Coalition had built a special diplomatic facility on Kepler Prime just for this historic meeting. Representatives from all 12 member species would be present to witness humanity's formal acceptance into their alliance. Captain Ryan Brooks joined them on the bridge as the Thunderbolt entered the planet's atmosphere. Ryan commanded the small security team that would protect the human delegation during the ceremony. His soldiers were armed with the latest human weapons and wore their dress uniforms for the occasion. Everyone aboard the ship felt the weight of history on their shoulders. The diplomatic facility was an impressive structure, built from gleaming white metal that seemed to glow in the morning sunlight. Alien ships of various designs were parked around the complex, and Jake could see Coalition security forces maintaining a respectful perimeter. Everything looked exactly as it should for such an important gathering. Ambassador Carter reviewed her speech one final time as they descended toward the landing pad. She had practiced the words in 3 different alien languages to show respect for the Coalition's diversity. The ceremony would begin with formal presentations from each species, followed by the signing of the membership agreement. If all went well, humanity would leave this planet as the Coalition's 13th member. The Thunderbolt touched down smoothly, and Jake watched through the windows as alien dignitaries approached their landing pad. The lead figure was Zeke Null, a high-ranking Vorthak diplomat whose serpentine body moved with fluid grace across the metal surface. Behind him walked representatives from the other Coalition species, including the crystalline Nexari and the towering insectoid Krix. Carter gathered her documents and smiled at Jake with genuine excitement. This was the moment she had worked toward for her entire career, the chance to bring humanity into the galactic community and secure their future among the stars. She had sacrificed everything for this opportunity, including her marriage and relationship. With her children back on Earth, the airlock opened and warm air flowed into the ship carrying unfamiliar scents from the alien world. Carter stepped out first, followed by Jake and the rest of the human delegation. Zeke Null approached them with what humans had learned was the Vorthak equivalent of a welcoming gesture. The serpentine alien spoke in perfect English, expressing his joy at this historic occasion. He guided the humans toward the main building while other Coalition representatives fell into step around them. Jake noticed that there seemed to be more security forces present than had been discussed in the planning meetings, but assumed it was just extra precaution for such an important event. Inside the facility, the main hall was decorated with banners representing all 12 Coalition species. A large table sat in the center of the room with places set for the human delegation and their alien hosts. Carter took her seat at the head of the table, while Jake and Captain Brooks positioned themselves nearby. The ceremony began with formal speeches from each Coalition representative. They spoke about the importance of unity among the galaxy's intelligent species and the mutual benefits that would come from expanding their alliance. Carter listened carefully, translating the alien words and gestures as she prepared for her own presentation. When her turn came, Carter stood and began her speech with confidence and grace. She spoke about humanity's desire for peace and cooperation, and their willingness to contribute to the galactic community. The alien representative seemed genuinely interested in her words, and several nodded approvingly as she outlined the terms of their proposed partnership. Everything was proceeding perfectly until Zeke Null raised his hand to interrupt Carter's speech. The serpentine alien's expression had changed from welcoming to something that Jake couldn't quite identify. There was something wrong with the way the other coalition representatives were positioning themselves around the room. Zeke Null spoke, slowly and clearly so that every human in the room could understand his words. He thanked Carter for her generous offer and praised humanity's dedication to peaceful diplomacy. Then he explained that the coalition had already made their decision about humanity's future in the galaxy. The attack came without warning as coalition security forces burst through every entrance to the hall. Jake saw the flash of energy weapons and heard Carter scream as alien soldiers opened fire on the human delegation. Captain Brooks drew his weapon and shouted orders to his security team, but they were vastly outnumbered by the attackers. Jake dove toward Carter, trying to shield her from the incoming fire, but an energy blast caught her in the chest. She looked up at him with shock and pain in her eyes as her life faded away. Around the room, other humans were falling as coalition weapons tore through their formal uniforms and ceremonial decorations. Their alliance. The entire diplomatic process had been an elaborate trap, designed to eliminate Earth's leadership and clear the way for coalition expansion into human territory. They had played their parts perfectly while planning humanity's destruction. Jake managed to activate his emergency beacon as explosions rocked the building around them. If any humans survived this massacre, they would need to warn Earth about what had really happened on Kepler Prime. The galaxy had made a terrible mistake by choosing war over diplomacy with humanity. The emergency beacon from Kepler Prime reached Earth 3 days after the massacre, and the signal carried more than just Jake Sullivan's desperate warning. Hidden cameras in the diplomatic facility had recorded every moment of the attack, including Ambassador Carter's death and the coalition's betrayal. The footage spread across human space within hours, turning shock and grief into something far more dangerous. President Kate Morrison stood before the Global Assembly with her hands clenched, at her sides and her voice barely containing the rage that burned in her chest. Behind her, massive screens showed the final moments of the human delegation as alien weapons cut them down in cold blood. The assembled representatives from every human world and colony watched in horrified silence as their hopes for peaceful coexistence died with Carter and her team. Morrison's speech was broadcast to every human settlement from the inner colonies to the frontier worlds beyond Pluto. She spoke about the decades of patient diplomacy that had led to this moment and the trust that humanity had placed in alien promises of friendship. The coalition had accepted human gifts and listened to human proposals while planning their destruction from the very beginning. Admiral Connor Walsh sat in his office deep beneath the Pentagon reviewing classified reports that painted a grim picture of humanity's military situation. The coalition controlled hundreds of worlds and commanded fleets that numbered in the thousands of ships. Their technology was generations ahead of anything humans had developed, and their combined military force could overwhelm Earth's defenses within weeks. But Walsh had spent his entire career preparing for this possibility, even when his political masters believed that peace with the aliens was inevitable. Hidden facilities on dozens of worlds had been developing weapons and technologies that existed outside the normal military budget. Projects so secret that even most government officials had no knowledge of their existence. Dr. Alex Turner arrived at the Pentagon carrying data files that would change the course of human history. His research teams had been working for years on theoretical weapons designed specifically to counter alien biology and technology. The coalition's arrogance in sharing their scientific knowledge during diplomatic exchanges had provided humans with detailed information about their enemies' weaknesses. Turner's laboratories had developed biological agents tailored to attack the unique cellular structures of each coalition species. Weapons that could disrupt the crystalline matrices of the Nexari, or interfere with the neural networks of the Cricks. The aliens had unknowingly provided the keys to their own destruction by trusting human scientists with their biological data. General Linda Hayes brought intelligence reports that revealed the true scope of humanity's preparation for galactic conflict. For decades, human diplomats and traders had been mapping coalition territory and identifying critical infrastructure targets. What the aliens had seen as innocent cultural exchange had actually been systematic intelligence gathering on an unprecedented scale. Human agents had infiltrated alien societies and learned their languages and customs, while secretly documenting military installations and fleet deployment patterns. Every gift exchanged and every friendship formed had been part of a larger strategy to understand and eventually defeat humanity's potential enemies. The coalition had welcomed spies into their homes while believing they were hosting peaceful. Ambassadors Commander Sullivan arrived on Earth aboard a damaged rescue shuttle, carrying the few survivors of the Kepler Prime massacre. His first-hand account of the attack provided crucial details about coalition military tactics and command structures. More importantly, his testimony gave human leaders the emotional fuel they needed to unite their species behind a single purpose. Sullivan described how Zeke Null had smiled while ordering the attack, and how coalition soldiers had celebrated as they killed unarmed diplomats. He spoke about Carter's final words and the way she had trusted alien promises even as energy beams tore through her body. His voice carried the pain of every human who had believed that peaceful coexistence was possible with species that viewed them as inferior. President Morrison called an emergency session of the Global Assembly and presented the evidence of coalition treachery to representatives from every human world. The vote for total war was unanimous, with even the most peaceful colony worlds demanding immediate retaliation. The age of human diplomacy had ended on the blood-soaked floors of Kepler Prime. The mobilization orders went out within hours, transforming human civilization into a single vast war machine. Factory complexes on industrial worlds began round the clock. Production of weapons and military equipment. Civilian shipyards were converted to build destroyers and cruisers, while mining operations doubled their output to feed the growing military buildup. Dr. Turner's secret research facilities emerged from the shadows as their experimental weapons moved into full production. Biological laboratories that had been disguised as medical research centers began manufacturing the deadliest pathogens ever created by human science. The aliens would learn that humanity's greatest strength had never been their technology, but their capacity for creative destruction. Every human colony, regardless of size or location, contributed to the war effort according to their abilities. Agricultural worlds increased food production to supply military forces, while frontier settlements provided raw materials and volunteer soldiers. Children too young to fight grew victory gardens while their parents worked in ammunition factories. General Hayes coordinated the recall of human military forces from across the galaxy as scattered patrol ships and exploration vessels returned to Earth for refitting and rearming. The small human fleet would be transformed into something the Coalition had never imagined possible. Every ship would be equipped with weapons specifically designed to exploit alien weaknesses. The Coalition had made their contempt for humanity clear through their actions at Kepler Prime. They viewed humans as primitive creatures unworthy of respect or consideration. That arrogance would become their greatest vulnerability as they prepared to face an enemy they had completely underestimated. Morrison's final speech to the human people was broadcast from the steps of the Global Assembly, building where humanity's leaders had once debated the merits of peaceful expansion. She promised that every alien species involved in the massacre would pay the ultimate price for their betrayal. The galaxy had chosen war over diplomacy, and humanity would give them exactly what they had asked for. Admiral Walsh stood on the bridge of the USS Constitution, watching as hundreds of human ships took formation around Earth. The largest military fleet in human history was preparing to carry their species' wrath to every corner of the galaxy. The aliens had shattered diplomacy with their treachery, and now they would burn in the fires of human vengeance. 6 months after the massacre at Kepler Prime, the Coalition leaders gathered on their capital world of Harmonium, believing that humanity had learned their place in the galactic order. Intelligence reports suggested that Earth's military forces had withdrawn to defensive positions around their home system, while their government struggled to maintain order among panicking civilian populations. The aliens congratulated themselves on eliminating a potential threat before it could grow too dangerous. Admiral Walsh stood in the command center of the USS Constitution, reviewing the final details of Operation Hellfire with his senior staff. The plan had been months in development, and every element had been tested and refined until it achieved mathematical perfection. 3 simultaneous strikes would announce humanity's return to galactic politics and demonstrate that the Coalition had gravely miscalculated their enemy's capabilities. Captain Steve Parker commanded a wolf pack of 12 human destroyers that had been modified with experimental stealth technology developed in Dr. Turner's secret laboratories. The ships could bend electromagnetic radiation around their hulls, making them effectively invisible to Coalition sensors. Parker's force had spent weeks infiltrating enemy territory while alien patrols passed within kilometers of their position, without detecting them. The Vorthak supply depot at Rigel Station was a massive facility that served as the primary logistics hub for Coalition military operations in 3 sectors. Hundreds of alien freighters docked there daily, carrying ammunition and equipment to fleet bases throughout the region. The station's destruction would cripple Coalition military readiness, while sending a clear message about humanity's new approach to interstellar relations. Parker's ships emerged from stealth mode in perfect formation at the heart of the alien convoy. The Vorthak defenders had less than 30 seconds to react before human plasma cannons began tearing through their hulls. The new weapons had been designed specifically to counter alien armor and shielding systems using data gathered during years of supposedly peaceful scientific exchange. The battle lasted exactly 18 minutes and ended with the complete annihilation of the Rigel Station and its defending fleet. Over 200 alien ships were reduced to expanding clouds of superheated gas, while their crews transmitted desperate warnings about impossible human weapons. The Coalition's first lesson in modern warfare had been delivered with devastating efficiency. Major Beth Collins led the second phase of Operation Hellfire as her Marine battalion descended toward the Kryx mining world of New Thessia. The insectoid, aliens had established extensive underground facilities on the planet, extracting rare elements needed for their advanced technology. Collins carried orders to demonstrate that nowhere in Coalition space was safe from human retaliation. The Kree defenders expected human military technology to be decades behind their own capabilities and deployed their forces accordingly. They were unprepared for the powered armor suits that allowed human soldiers to move faster and hit harder than any biological creature. Collins's Marines emerged from their drop pods like armored demons carrying weapons that fired explosive rounds designed to shatter Kryx exoskeletons. The planetary defense commander tried to rally his forces by reminding them that humans were weak creatures dependent on primitive chemical propulsion and kinetic weapons. His confidence evaporated as Collins's advance units demonstrated their new plasma rifles and gravity bombs. The aliens' dying transmission described human soldiers who fought like machines and showed no mercy to enemies who had betrayed their trust. New Thessia fell in 72 hours as human forces systematically eliminated every Kryx military installation on the planet's surface. The surviving aliens were given 1 hour to evacuate aboard whatever ships remained operational. Those who attempted to resist found themselves facing weapons specifically engineered to exploit the weaknesses in insectoid biology that Coalition scientists had shared during diplomatic exchanges. The Coalition's response to these attacks revealed the arrogance that would ultimately destroy them. Instead of recognizing the threat that humanity represented, they dismissed the victories as lucky strikes against unprepared targets. Admiral Thekvor of the crystalline Nexari species volunteered to lead a punishment fleet that would end human resistance once and for all. Thekvor commanded 200 of the Coalition's most advanced warships, including the flagship Eternal, Harmony, which was considered invulnerable to any weapon in the known galaxy. The alien admiral broadcast his intentions throughout Coalition space, promising to make humanity an example that would discourage other inferior species from challenging established galactic order. The punishment fleet's journey to Earth took 3 weeks, and their approach was monitored by human intelligence assets throughout Coalition territory. Admiral Walsh used every day of that time to prepare the trap that would define the next phase of the war. Earth's solar system was transformed into the galaxy's most sophisticated killing field, using technology that the aliens had never imagined possible. Commander Sullivan had recovered from his injuries, and now commanded the USS Vengeance, a heavy cruiser equipped with the most advanced weapons in the human arsenal. He volunteered to serve as bait for the Coalition fleet, knowing that his ship would face impossible odds if the plan failed. The memory of Ambassador Carter's death drove him to accept any risk if it meant striking back at her murderers. When Admiral Thekvor's fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of Earth's solar system, they found exactly what they expected to see. A small force of human ships clustered around their homeworld in a desperate defensive formation. The crystalline admiral ordered his forces to advance, slowly savoring the moment when humanity would finally be taught their proper place in the galaxy. The Coalition fleet had penetrated halfway to Earth when they triggered the first phase of Walsh's Trap. Stealth mines that had been seeded throughout the system over decades of preparation activated simultaneously, creating a deadly maze of explosions and radiation bursts. Alien ships that had survived battles against a dozen different species were torn apart by weapons they couldn't see or detect. Sullivan's ship led the human fleet out from behind Luna as the second phase of the trap engaged. Automated weapon platforms emerged from asteroid fields and began targeting Coalition vessels with unprecedented accuracy. The aliens found themselves caught between the mines ahead and the human fleet behind, while hidden defenses attacked from every direction. Admiral Thekvor's final transmission was a desperate plea for mercy directed at the human fleet that was systematically destroying his forces. He offered to surrender his remaining ships and withdraw from human space if Walsh would spare his crew. The response came in the form of plasma torpedoes that reduced the Eternal Harmony to its component atoms. No Coalition ship escaped from Earth's solar system to carry word of what had happened there. The punishment fleet that was meant to demonstrate alien superiority instead became proof of humanity's deadly evolution. The galaxy was about to learn that humans had spent their peaceful years preparing for the war that would reshape the known. The destruction of Admiral Thekvor's punishment fleet sent shockwaves throughout Coalition space as member species struggled to understand how their most powerful naval force had simply vanished without trace. Emergency sessions convened on every major world, while military commanders demanded explanations for the impossible defeat. The humans had been dismissed as primitive creatures barely capable of interstellar travel, yet somehow they had annihilated 200 of the galaxy's most advanced warships. President Morrison appeared before the Global Assembly one final time to address humanity's response to decades of alien deception and betrayal. Her words were broadcast to every human world and transmitted throughout Coalition territory, so that every alien species could understand exactly what they had brought upon themselves. The age of human patience had ended with Ambassador Carter's blood on the floors of Kepler Prime. Morrison's declaration was simple and absolute in its scope. Every alien species that had participated in the massacre would face complete extinction. Their worlds would be sterilized, their fleets destroyed, and their civilizations erased from galactic history. The Coalition had chosen to see humans as inferior creatures unworthy of respect, and now they would learn the price of that arrogance. Admiral Walsh coordinated the largest military operation in human history, as fleets emerged from Earth's industrial shipyards carrying weapons that existed beyond alien comprehension. The Coalition had spent centuries believing that their technology represented the pinnacle of galactic achievement. They were about to discover that human creativity in developing instruments of destruction had no equal among the stars. General Hayes directed the systematic targeting of Coalition infrastructure across hundreds of worlds. Human ships appeared without warning in star systems that had known peace for generations. Power grids went dark, communication networks fell silent, and food production facilities burned under the fury of human plasma bombardments. The aliens learned that civilization was fragile when facing enemies who understood exactly where to strike. Dr. Turner's biological weapons proved devastatingly effective against species that had shared their genetic information during years of peaceful scientific exchange. Pathogens designed specifically for Crick's physiology spread through their hive cities, turning their greatest strength into a vulnerability. The insectoid aliens died by the billions as their interconnected society became a pathway for perfectly engineered diseases. The crystalline Nixari found that their silicon-based biology offered no protection against weapons designed to disrupt their unique molecular structures. Human scientists had spent decades studying samples of Nixari technology provided during diplomatic missions. That knowledge now enabled the creation of resonance weapons that could shatter entire Nixari populations by targeting the harmonic frequencies that held their bodies together. Captain Brooks had been promoted to admiral after his heroic defense of the human diplomats at Kepler Prime. Now he commanded the assault fleet approaching Harmonium, the Coalition's capital world. The planet's gleaming crystal cities had been built over thousands of years by the proud Nixari civilization as monuments to their technological achievements and cultural superiority. The bombardment of Harmonium lasted 6 hours as human plasma cannons reduced millennia of alien architecture to clouds of glittering dust. Brooks had specific orders to ensure that no structure on the planet's surface survived the attack. The coalition government tried desperately to communicate with the human fleet, offering surrender and promising reparations for their actions at Kepler Prime. Their messages were answered with recordings of Ambassador Carter's final moments and the sounds of human diplomats dying under alien weapons. Brooks' response to their pleas for mercy was delivered through the targeting systems of his flagship, as another salvo of plasma torpedoes eliminated what remained of the planetary capital. The galaxy would remember this day as the moment when human diplomacy was replaced by human justice. The coalition began fragmenting as terror overwhelmed the bonds that had held their alliance together. The aquatic depth species attempted to negotiate separate peace with humanity, offering detailed intelligence about their former allies' military dispositions. Their betrayal of coalition secrets earned them nothing more than a slightly delayed extinction as human biological agents turned their ocean worlds into vast graveyards. Commander Sullivan led the hunt for Zeeknal, the Vorthak diplomat who had orchestrated the original betrayal at Kepler Prime. The serpentine alien was finally located in a research facility where he had been desperately studying human psychology. In an attempt to understand the enemy he had created, Sullivan found him surrounded by video recordings of the massacre, trying to comprehend how peaceful negotiations had transformed into galactic genocide. Zeeknal's execution was broadcast throughout the galaxy as a warning to any species that might consider betraying human trust in the future. The alien who had smiled while ordering Carter's death died screaming as Sullivan personally operated the device that slowly dissolved his serpentine body. His final words were apologies and pleas for forgiveness that came centuries too late to save his people. The energy-based Luminols attempted to flee to another galaxy, but found their escape route blocked by human ships equipped with dimensional suppressors. Dr. Turner's research teams had developed technology specifically designed to trap beings who existed partially outside normal space-time. The Luminols discovered that their ethereal nature offered no protection against weapons engineered to target their unique energy signatures. Dr. Turner's most terrible creation was reserved for the Krix homeworld, where billions of insectoid aliens had gathered in massive hive cities that stretched deep beneath the planet's surface. The Nova Catalyst was a device that could trigger controlled fusion reactions in planetary cores, turning entire worlds into miniature stars. The weapon represented the ultimate expression of human scientific capability applied to the art of destruction. The Krix homeworld's transformation into a burning star was visible from neighboring systems as the planet's mass converted to pure energy in a process that would continue for millennia. The explosion served as both a monument to human wrath and a warning to any species that might question humanity's right to rule the galaxy. The light of their vengeance would shine among the stars long after the last alien had died. Admiral Walsh stood on the bridge of his flagship watching as the final coalition fleet was hunted down and destroyed in the Outer Rim territories. The battle had been brief and one-sided as human weapons tore through alien defenses that had been designed to counter conventional technology. These enemies had learned too late that humans approached warfare with the same creativity they brought to every other aspect of their existence. The galaxy grew quieter with each passing day as alien civilizations fell silent under the weight of human retribution. Worlds that had bustled with activity for thousands of years now drifted empty through space, carrying only the memories of species that had chosen to see humanity as inferior. The Coalition's arrogance had earned them a place in history as the alliance that awakened sleeping giants. 3 years after the massacre at Kepler Prime, the galaxy existed under a new reality that would have been unimaginable to the proud species that once dominated known space. The Galactic Coalition had become nothing more than an entry in historical databases while humanity established their rule over territories that stretched across thousands of star systems. What had begun as an act of diplomatic betrayal had evolved into the complete restructuring of galactic civilization. President Morrison stood in the former Coalition Council chamber on what had once been called Harmonium, but now bore the name New Earth Prime. The crystalline architecture of the building had been repaired and modified with human technology, creating a fusion of alien artistry and human engineering that symbolized the new galactic order. Representatives from the surviving alien species sat in chairs designed for beings who no longer controlled their own destinies. The terms of humanity's peace were absolute and non-negotiable. Every surviving alien species would undergo complete disarmament and submit to permanent human oversight of their governments. Their military technologies would be destroyed, and their weapons manufacturing capabilities dismantled under the supervision of human inspection teams. Any attempt to develop new military systems would result in the immediate sterilization of the offending world. Admiral Walsh commanded fleets that patrolled every corner of known space, ensuring that the new order remained stable and unchallenged. Human ships equipped with the galaxy's most advanced sensor systems monitored alien communications and tracked the movement of every vessel larger than a shuttlecraft. The aliens were permitted to maintain their trade networks and civilian technologies, but only under licenses granted by human authorities. The surviving members of the original 12 coalition species had been reduced to scattered refugee populations, dependent on human mercy for their continued existence. The aquatic depths occupied a handful of ocean worlds under strict human supervision, while the few remaining Nexari lived in carefully monitored crystal cities that could be destroyed instantly if they showed signs of rebellion. Dr. Turner's research facilities had expanded throughout the former Coalition territory, as human scientists worked to understand and catalog alien technologies. Every piece of equipment and every scientific advance was studied not for adoption into human systems, but for the development of countermeasures and weapons. The galaxy's accumulated knowledge became humanity's insurance against future threats. Commander Sullivan had been promoted to Grand Admiral, and now oversaw the establishment of human colonies on every habitable world in former Coalition space. The colonization process followed strict protocols designed to prevent alien populations from achieving the numbers or organization necessary to challenge human rule. Reproductive controls and population monitoring ensured that no species could ever again threaten Earth's children. The few surviving Coalition leaders, including a broken and defeated Thekvor, who had somehow escaped the destruction of his fleet, were kept alive as living examples of the price of betraying human friendship. They were forced to tour human educational facilities and military academies where young people learned about the galaxy's history and the consequences of underestimating their species. General Hayes established the Department of Alien Affairs to oversee the administration of the galaxy's surviving populations. Her agents maintained detailed files on every alien individual and monitored their activities for signs of sedition or rebellion. The galaxy had learned to fear human intelligence-gathering capabilities, but they were only beginning to understand the scope of humanity's surveillance network. Educational systems on human worlds incorporated the story of the Coalition War into every curriculum, ensuring that future generations would understand both the cost of trusting alien promises and the effectiveness of human military response. Children learned about Ambassador Carter's sacrifice and the way her death had united humanity behind a single purpose that reshaped the known universe. The alien species were permitted to maintain their cultural practices and artistic traditions under human supervision, but any attempt to glorify their military past or question human authority was strictly forbidden. Museums on former Coalition worlds displayed artifacts from their civilizations, alongside exhibits explaining how their arrogance and betrayal had led to their downfall. Dr. Turner's biological weapons remained in production at facilities throughout, human space serving as a constant reminder to alien populations of their vulnerability to human scientific capabilities. The pathogens were updated regularly to account for any evolutionary adaptations that might develop in surviving populations, ensuring that extinction remained only a laboratory accident away. The galaxy's economic systems were restructured to serve human interests, as trade routes that had once connected hundreds of independent worlds now existed solely to support Earth's expanding colonial empire. Alien worlds provided raw materials and agricultural products, while human factories produced the manufactured goods that sustained galactic civilization under its new management. Admiral Walsh implemented a simple policy for dealing with worlds that showed signs of rebellion or resistance to human authority. Orbital bombardment platforms positioned around every inhabited system could sterilize entire planets within hours of receiving orders from Earth. The threat was never explicitly stated, but every alien leader understood the consequences of challenging their new rulers. The stars themselves seemed dimmer in the years following the Coalition War, as if the galaxy mourned what it had lost in the fires of human vengeance. Ancient civilizations that had contributed art and science and philosophy to galactic culture existed now only in carefully curated museums, supervised by humans who viewed them as curiosities from a more primitive age. President Morrison's final address to the galaxy was broadcast from the steps of the Global Assembly on Earth, where humanity's leaders had once debated the merits of peaceful expansion among the stars. She spoke about the lessons learned from the Coalition's betrayal and the importance of maintaining human vigilance against species that might mistake mercy for weakness. Commander Sullivan stood on the observation deck of his flagship watching as construction crews completed another orbital defense platform around a former Coalition world. The galaxy stretched before him, peaceful and orderly under human rule, but he remembered Ambassador Carter's words about the importance of building bridges between species. Her dream had died with her on Kepler Prime, but perhaps future generations might find a way to heal the wounds that human wrath had carved across the stars. The new galactic order would endure for as long as humanity maintained the strength to enforce it and the memory to remember why such enforcement had become necessary. The Coalition had shattered diplomacy with their treachery, and humanity had given them exactly what they deserved in return. The galaxy belonged to Earth now and would remain under human protection until the last star burned cold in the endless.